And we spent a lot of time the last hour talking about the specific comments of Reggie Jackson on the pregame show, the broadcast on Fox, which all of us really enjoyed. And Tom Verducci was a part of that and joins us right now on Willard and Dibs 95.7 The Game. Hey, Tom, thank you for coming on. What was your overall takeaway from being in that building last night?
Oh, man, just a beautiful evening. I just thought the tone of it was perfect. I mean, I've been looking forward to this one ever since I heard they were playing this game at Rickwood. And I had my expectations really high. The ballpark did not disappoint. I mean, it just looked beautiful. It was a beautiful night. And I think that everything that came about, it was a good game, a competitive game. The celebrations of Willie Mays and the Negro Leagues, I think, were just perfect. It's really hard for me to put into words that this thing, like, I had high expectations, and it was even better than I thought. I just walked away from that park that night just feeling good about baseball.
And we all kind of agreed, Tom, because we all had high expectations as well, not only with the Willie Mays connectivity to it, and then tragic that he died a couple of days before, but just the overall excitement of going back to a place where baseball had first been played over 100 years ago. Can you explain to our audience exactly what they did to the field to make it a major league field again?
Yeah, they put a lot of work in, more than $5 million. The biggest thing they did is they had to move the field back because the distance between home plate and the backstop was about 85 feet.
Wow.
And it actually looked a lot like like Oakland's ballpark, where there was so much foul territory. The bullpens were actually in foul territory, and there was still a lot of room. So by moving it back, it just looks better. The fans are closer to the field. They regraded everything because it had that old turtleback design. That was the drainage system. Just let it run off to the sides. They put a whole new drainage system underneath, flattened everything out. The grass they brought in is the same kind of grass they use at Dodger Stadium and Angel Stadium. The dirt they brought in is from Slippery Rock, PA. That's in 25 major league parks. So they did everything to make this thing, A+ major league quality. I didn't hear a single complaint from the players about the field conditions, even the lighting, which was all temporary because, the original lights from 1936, the wiring is just shot. It's not even close to being up to code. There's no way they could have gotten those up to code and ready to go. So they brought in the portable lighting. I thought it looked really bright enough. And the players, I didn't hear anybody complain about that. So a ton of work went into this, and there were things behind the scenes, building clubhouses for the players, weight rooms, batting cages, all that kind of stuff. I think they did an excellent job, and I think the players had a really, really good time there.
Tom Verducci with Fox with us here on Willard and Dibs. Tom, you're a pro. I'm sure you did all the homework in the world building up to this. I bet you also had some unbelievable conversations with historical figures, and just being out there, I wanted to ask you, what'd you learn this week?
Oh, man, I learned that Willie Mays' original number was number 14. Patrick Bailey was wearing number 14 last night, Willie's original number. I tried to get this in the broadcast. We had so many things to get in. I thought it was a cool story because he shows up, obviously it's 51. He's brought up to the Giants. And it's May 25th. He plays a couple of days, and during that time, there's a guy on the team named Jack McGuire who was wearing number 24, and he got put on waivers, and the Pirates claimed him 3 days into Willie showing up, and then Willie switched to number 24. And nobody has ever worn the number 24 for 22 years the way Willie has. Obviously, you can't see the number 24 without thinking of Willie. And interesting story, Jack McGuire is a guy who grew up in St. Louis with Yogi Berra, and he was the one who gave Yogi his nickname. So Jack McGuire gave Yogi his nickname and Willie number 24. It's just crazy. Huh. So Patrick Bailey, I'm not sure if he knows it, he's wearing Willie's original number.
That's a fantastic story. Tom Verducci here on Willard and Dibs on 95.7 The Game. Willie passes 2 days before the Rickwood game, and it seems almost more poignant that he was no longer there to make the game more about Willie Mays. What was the shift in the broadcast after the news of Willie Mays passing came before the game?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about obviously honoring the Negro Leagues and honoring Willie. And then when Willie passed, we thought, you know what, we have to slant this a little bit more towards the celebration of Willie's life and career. Certainly did not want to give any short shrift to the Negro Leagues because Willie himself was really excited about this game because it threw a spotlight on some of the guys who didn't get recognized, certainly not as much as him. So he was all about having his teammates and fellow Negro Leaguers recognized in this game. And we wanted to stay true to that. But I think a key to this night, guys, was when Michael Mays was out there, his son, and he's the one who said, let's hear it. You know, he wanted the crowd. He said, we want Willie to hear you. Be loud. And I think that set the tone from being something that could have been, you know, sort of somber and sad in terms of losing the great Willie Mays. And instead, it did turn into a celebration of Willie Mays. And I think Michael really set that tone. And it was, you know, we've talked to him before the game as well. And I think we felt good about that as well, that it wasn't going to be a somber night, that it was going to be a celebration more than anything else. And then Michael made sure the crowd really got into it as well. I thought that was a key moment that really set the tone for the night.
Tom, in addition to the history of that time in this nation's history, I think there were almost different portions of history that were on display on your broadcast for fans of a certain age to know that all in one group, you know, there's Bonds, there's Griffey Jr., there's David Ortiz, there's A-Rod, there's Jeter, all sitting there in front of us at one time. What did you kind of gather from those guys all being in the same place at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, other than going to Cooperstown for the induction weekend and having so much baseball royalty in one place, that was befitting, you know, on a night to honor Willie Mays. So it did strike me, you know, the number of home runs and hits at the ballpark that night was pretty darn impressive. It's still Willie is the star of stars. I mean, even these guys you just mentioned, you know, great players, first ballot Hall of Famers you're talking about, you know, it's still the night belonged to Willie. I mean, it really was amazing that, you know, his presence there, I think, was over every part of the festivities, even the game. I was thinking about him all night long. And like you, I mean, I'm sitting there. I don't know how many times I told myself, this is where Willie Mays at the age of 17 was playing for the Birmingham Black Barons. I mean, it's crazy. Now there's a major league game on this field. I don't know that there's ever been anything like that where we, you know, had a baseball game at a venue where someone started their professional career, and one of the all-time greats at that. And I'm looking out there at left field, and Brendan Donovan, the Cardinals, is out there because Willie did play his first game in left field. The center fielder shortly thereafter broke his leg, and Willie played center. But I'm thinking, man, left field, Rickwood Field, that's where Willie's career began. And Brendan Donovan's out there, this kid from Alabama. He gets 3 hits in the game. It was just crazy. I mean, the way I felt Willie's presence the whole night.
And it's obviously the connection with Barry Bonds, with that being his godfather, Willie Mays. And you mentioned Alex Rodriguez and the Cooperstown angle. Do you think having Barry up there and A-Rod, neither of whom is in the Hall of Fame, the fact that these two are continually more Alex than Barry, obviously, but continually kind of being reinserted into the national landscape, does that help to soften the eventual induction of these guys in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I think, you know, for a lot of people it might. I mean, time heals wounds, they say. And, you know, as even if it's an emotional reaction or you feel locked into a certain position that you take, it does tend to soften over time. There's no question about it. You know, maybe being out front in front of cameras reminds people how great these guys were. And, you know, I think the same thing sort of happened with Pete Rose over the years. It didn't really help him get into the Hall of Fame because that's a rule that it's pretty darn ironclad. I don't see baseball changing on that. But I do think more people started coming around to Pete Rose. It's like you start thinking, well, enough is enough, kind of paid his dues. So I think what you're driving at, you know, I can't say we're there yet where these guys are going to get, you know, 75% of the vote or of the committees now in Barry's case. But I do think over time, yes, their chances do improve. How quickly, I don't know.
Tom Verducci with Fox on the broadcast last night at Rickwood Field is with us here on 95.7 The Game. Tom, let's go deeper into the Negro Leagues experience that you had in talking to some of those living members who were out on the field last night. What were they feeling and saying? What was your biggest takeaway that you can pass along there?
My biggest takeaway is these are amazing men. And I say that not because they were a great baseball player, but let's face it, you know, they played in a very prejudicial time and went up against barriers that, I mean, it's hard for us to even imagine what they went through just in terms of the normal course of life, traveling, eating, staying in hotels. And yet my takeaway was there was not an ounce of bitterness among them. I mean, they were just these classy gentlemen who, and the word love came up so many times talking about the Negro Leagues experience. They love to play baseball. I heard that over and over again, that no matter what was happening when they left the field, that field was a joy for them, and nothing took away the joy of playing baseball. And I think that, to me, was the biggest takeaway, that they had every right to be bitter and to be sad or look back and think, what if? But instead, it's like the old Buck O'Neill. He was right on time because he enjoyed playing with this group of guys. There was something special about that. And I think, having everybody, especially a younger generation who really might not be familiar with Negro Leagues at all, having them exposed to these stories and these players especially, that was the best part about the game. I mean, other than celebrating Willie, of course, but I think that discovery for a lot of people happened last night. Maybe you look up something online, you saw, Bill Greason or whoever it might be, a name that popped up, Josh Gibson and Oscar Charleston, and you find out a little bit more about them. I thought that was so cool that, Bob Kendrick, who was in the booth, as you guys know, is just terrific storyteller. Oh my goodness, I could listen to him all night. And he spent his whole life here basically keeping the memory of the league and the players alive. And I think this was another level to that, to have this night dedicated to them and introduce them and the league to a lot of people who might not know about it.
Tom, do you get the sense that Major League Baseball is going to try to run this back either at Rickwood next year or some other field?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I don't think right now it's on the schedule. I know the Field of Dreams in Iowa is not on the schedule either. They did plan, or at least they had some blueprints to play a game in Paris next year, and that just hasn't come through. There were just too many logistical hurdles. They had kept that date open for an international game there. So right now, I don't think there's one of these specialty, I call them tentpole games, because, the baseball season is so long. When you get a game like this, it almost feels like an event. It's so different and unusual. But I'm all for it, whether you go back to Rickwood, whether there's another place. I mean, there's so many other places you can go play a game without necessarily having, 40,000 people in the stands. I'm all for it. I think it's great. It was interesting because I did the game over in London a couple of weeks ago, and the players were talking about, we wish we had more games over here. I wouldn't mind saying, say you send 4 teams over there and you play a little round robin on the weekend. They thought it was a long way to go just to play 2 games. They enjoyed the experience. So I think the players are on board with these games. And, whether it's other minor league venues, I had a crazy idea that I would love to see, and this would never happen, but I would love to see a field set up in Central Park in New York, and you bring in the Dodgers, the Giants, the Mets, and the Yankees, and you play 2 doubleheaders back to back, a throwback to the glory days of New York baseball. It's probably a complete logistical nightmare, but the more people start thinking outside the box about these events, I think, the more I want to see them.
Ooh, I love that idea. That's amazing. Talk to somebody. Make it happen over there at Fox. Tom Verducci is with us.
My other idea, guys, is to have a California Cup.
Okay.
Where you take let's assume Oakland is playing, I don't know where they're playing, but say Los Angeles or Las Vegas, but you could play a cup in Los Angeles or San Francisco and bring the California teams in to play on a weekend, a little round-robin tournament. Why not?
Well, You do have 5 teams unless Oakland becomes Las Vegas, and then they don't get to come anymore then, Tom.
Well, we'll work that out.
Yeah, let's leave Dave Cavill out of our parties, okay? We don't. Anyway, Tom, what about this? We have been working a lot over the last 24 hours with what Reggie Jackson said on your broadcast after the question from Alex Rodriguez. I'm curious, as someone who had probably an earpiece in there, was Fox in any way aware that Reggie wanted to address that? And if not, how did the broadcast kind of evolve and adjust as Reggie took the conversation to that place?
I'm not aware that, this was in any way on a schedule, that this is where he was going. But I think anytime you bring Reggie on, you guys know Reggie, he's going to speak the truth, and you never know where he might take a conversation. So You're prepared for that. And I think he was well within his rights. Again, Reggie's speaking the truth. He's speaking. I think it was something that I'm glad he said it. And I think the pregame was the perfect venue for it because it didn't overshadow, if you will, the events that took place after. I'm talking about the ceremony before and the game itself. It was something that needed to be said. I mean, when I got on the air first and, right before the first pitch, I wanted to bring up the fact that, it's not all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to the history that we're talking about. Willie Mays and the Black Barons were not allowed to use the locker room at Rickwood Field. They had to dress at black-owned motels and walk over and play in the ballpark. There was segregated seating during those days. And it still blows me away that until 1963, it's not that long ago, it was literally illegal in Birmingham. They had an ordinance where blacks and whites could not play a game. I'm not talking about baseball. It was actually written, even checkers. They called it the checkers rule. This was all part of, again, American history, not just baseball history. So, in some ways, I'm glad that Reggie brought it up. Listen, even if I didn't agree with it, as long as he's doing something that's speaking from the heart, and that's what he does, I'm okay with that. And if it made people uncomfortable, I don't think that was Reggie's purpose. But again, he's got some. I mean, listen, I can't imagine what it was like to be in his shoes in Birmingham, Alabama in 1967. Again, I just told you that it was illegal until 63 to even play a game of checkers between a black person and a white person. So it's not like they turned the racial corner in a heartbeat in 67. There were still those strong feelings. So it's part of the story of Rickwood. It's part of the story of Birmingham. And Reggie spoke the truth.
Yeah, no, just so we're clear, we were in full support. I thought it really did an unbelievable job of, at least just for me, just one fan, it sort of helped crystallize what this was celebrating, because I think for a lot of people, it's just like, this is a cool event. But after Reggie spoke, it crystallized what was being celebrated here, and it's these men. It's these men and what they achieved and what they had to go through.
They're well said. I mean, it really is. And I'm glad, again, that a younger generation that, wasn't as familiar, obviously, with what Reggie went through, realizes what these guys went through. I mean, we think of them all as these polished major leaguers, and you get to the major leagues and, everything has been kind of a smooth road to get there with special treatment everywhere you go. And it's certainly not the case. So the hardships that they went through, especially off the field, I'm glad Reggie brought it up as well.
Tom, thank you so much for coming on. That was an amazing event. We loved the broadcast. Appreciate your thoughts today.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
There it is, Tom Verducci on